All right, if you are watching and you see me, please do me a favor and go ahead and give a let me know how the audio is doing on this stream here. All right, so I think we're good. I think we're live here, but let me know how the audio is. A couple weeks ago, the audio was bad. I want to make sure that it sounds okay here. So, all right, very, very good, very good. All right, little bit of something today. We're going to be talking about rhythms and the basics of rhythm. This is I tried to title this lesson to be a crash course in rhythms. There's a lot of things that in music that sometimes get overlooked, and this is one of those things, is rhythm. So without further ado, we're going to jump into this. Actually, with a little bit more ado, I wanted to let you guys know that I'm probably going to start taking, starting next week or maybe the week after, question suggestions on these streams. And basically what I could do is do like answer a few questions each stream, whatever the most kind of recurring are, or the most popular questions. And then maybe dive into some others too that are not super popular questions that might be interesting to me. Anyway, but that is that. So let's dive right in here. Make sure that, yep, there we go. The board is working. Well, maybe it's a little out of focus here. Let's see. Oh, come on. How's that so out of focus? Maybe if I put a hand in here, it'll work. There we go. All right. So today is rhythm. And I've got a pretty cool way of teaching this. So we'll just kind of do it this way. The first thing when you're thinking about rhythm is think of, by the way, we're going to be using 4/4 for most of this lesson, and we'll talk about that in a second, what that means. But for all intents and purposes in this lesson, that's what it's going to mean. So think of it this way. You see music written out, and usually it'll be something like this. It'll have like a time signature here, and then there's measures like this that are just kind of written across. And there's different rhythms and different things written in here. Even if you're making like a chord skeleton, you're going to see something, like you're going to see like a G7 or whatever. The chords don't even matter. But you'd see something like this. And there are these bar lines that will divide them up. And then sometimes people will write in rhythms in there too. And so you might have like... up on top, you might even see a rhythm. I'm just kind of finish this up. Might even see a rhythm on here. Let's say on here, went up to the D, did something like this, and then it was it had some sort of rhythm written up here. So sometimes you'll see something notated up here, like that on top of that. This would be like more of a contemporary music type thing. Obviously, if you're writing for drums or something like that, it's going to be on a line. Those, usually if it's written like that, you again have your time signature, but then you would have like different lines that mean different things. And so this is like your kick would be down here, and you would have some sort of thing notating what that is. Let's say you have 2 bars here. Maybe you have a hi-hat up here and snare. And then, so you might have something like this, depending on how they write out their stuff. And then, you might have something like that. I don't know what, maybe this is your thing written out. Anyway, so what does all this mean? What do these things mean? How do they divide up? What does everything matter? How does it all matter? Look at it this way. Think of a measure. So we're looking at this whole thing right now for this point, we're looking at a 4/4 measure. Okay. So we're thinking in terms of filling up this 4/4 measure. Think of it this way as a pizza. You could have a whole pizza right here. Okay. So there's a whole pizza. And then, you could divide that pizza into, let me even use a different color here. You could divide that pizza into 4 different slices if you wanted to, like this. And, so these are going to be, quarters like that. Okay. So this is like a quarter slice of pizza. If you wanted to do that, hopefully that kind of makes sense. That kind of coming through like that. So notice that the space is the same. It's the same amount of pizza in this whole thing. And this same exact thing can be applied to everything. So you have like your quarter here. I might have to make some different size. Let me do it kind of the right way. Let's see. So you'd have, let's say, here's your whole pizza here. And then you might have your, going over here, you might have like a half of a pizza. Okay, 2 slices. And then you might have a quarter, 4 slices like this. So this would be like, these would be like half a pizza. And these are quarter. And then you move on. You just keep dividing if you depending on how many people or whatever, how many slices you want. So here you'd have, these would be eighths. I'm not going to write all these out. You know what they are. So these are eighths like that. And you could even go so far as to say, like, probably have to write this in a little bit bigger. Might get a little muddy here. So for eighths, so we can even just keep on dividing these into slices with sixteenths. Okay. So these are 16th, what am I doing? 16th slices. Hopefully that makes sense. So on here, you've got 5 different pizzas. You've got a whole pizza. You've got a half, a pizza with 2 halves, pizza with 4 quarters, and you have a pizza with 8 eighths, and you have a pizza with 16 sixteenths of a slice, or 16th of a pizza, 16 slices. So that's how you could divide them up that way. And then it doesn't have to be divided up like that evenly. So for example, you might say, actually, we're going to take this whole pizza and I'm going to divide it up like this. I'm going to take this whole pizza and I want to have one huge slice for somebody. And then I want to have a quarter slice for somebody. So, like that. And then maybe you say, all right, and somebody else is going to get an 8th slice. And then somebody else is going to get 2 16th, like that. So all of this is still one pizza. Nothing has changed here. It's all one pizza. It just depends on how you divide it up. So you have multiple different ways you could do that. We do one more kind of example of that. And then trust me, this is going to get a little bit better. So again, you've got your quarters here. Whatever you've got, you could even do, you don't even have to be, next to each other. You could even do something like this, where you have eighths here, an eighth there, so an eighth over here, and then we just have 1 or 2 16th notes here, or 16th slices here. Okay, you guys follow what I'm saying here? There's your 16 right there. So now, so that's the pizza. That should make most sense to everybody. And let's go on here. Now, imagine this, instead of thinking of it in terms of a round pizza, okay, we're going to think of it in terms of like a square, long square pizza. The same amount, same pizza as far as the amount that it's going to feed, but it's just going to be a long square one, okay? So here we'd have, like let's say we have this, here's our long square pizza like this, okay? And this would be, it's the whole pizza right here, okay? And then same size pizza right here. And, here, this would be, if I cut it in half, these would be half slices of pizza. Still pizza, same size pizza. If I cut it into quarters, you guys follow where I'm going here. These are quarters. And then finally, or not finally, 2 more, you could do, you could cut a whole pizza and you could cut them into eighths. Like this. So these are all eighths here. And then finally down here, you've got your party where you're cutting everything up into 16ths here. Okay, so it's like this kind of thing rolling out. So these are 16th slices. Okay, follow there. And then the same thing, essentially applies here. Again, this is a whole pizza. All these are in whole pizzas, okay? And you can divide those up however the heck you want again. So you could do it just in, you could do like we've done 4/4, whatever, but you could still do, here's your pizza here. You could say, all right, we're going to do like a half here. And you could do a quarter here. And then maybe you do have, you know what, let's just let's get some slices for the kids here. And we're going to make these all 16th slices here. Like that. So these all add up to that whole pizza, no matter how you're going to divide it. They don't even have to be in any order, as long as they all add up to a whole pizza. So basically, then let's look at this in terms of notes. Okay. So think of it this way. So we're going to take our pizza, and you probably could have guessed this, but we're going to divide this up as if all the slices were notes. Okay. And so we have like let's say, let me see if I can try to, I'm trying to make a key up here. So we've got like let me just do this here. So let's say we have like a whole pizza here. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. Yeah. All right, we're gonna do this. A whole pizza is gonna be like this. Okay. So here's our whole, and then we're gonna have our half pizza. It's gonna be like this. This is a half note. Think of these as terms of notes. We'd have our quarter note. It's gonna be half of that, and then we have our eighth note. And then we have finally our 16th note. Okay, you guys follow that right there? So the goal of this in a 4/4 measure, this pizza is worth a 4/4. This is a whole note. It's worth a 4/4. So if we're in 4/4, this 4/4 means there are 4 beats in the measure. Okay. And don't worry about it right now as far as what the bottom means. Well, the bottom just means that the quarter note gets a beat, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Just think of it in terms of it takes 4 beats to put all these things together. Okay. And so the same way, we could fill up this whole thing as long as it all equals a whole. Okay. So we could take, a half and a quarter and 2/8. That equals a whole. We could take 16 of these 16th notes, and that equals the whole measure. You could take 8/8 notes. You could take 4/8 notes and 8 16th notes. You could take 2 quarter notes and 4 eighth notes, if I'm saying everything right in my brain. So let's look at that in like kind of practical terms here. This pizza here, okay, we're going to kind of right here, we're going to kind of cut off the edges. We're just gonna make this pizza here like this. This has 4 different beats in this pizza. Okay. So in fact, let's even do it like this. Actually, no, we're good. So we have like first beat, second beat, third beat, fourth beat. And then this one over here, this isn't a beat here. This is just the end cap. Okay. It's just capping it out. Okay. So we have these right here. So we have our 1 right here, our 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So on our note, the beat where we're kind of landing on that, it does not start on the middle of the note. Okay. It's going to start kind of like right here at the edge. If that makes sense. So it will here in a second. So if I were to take let's say 2 half notes, and to make up this right here, I could come in right here, and just like this would fill that like that. So we would have here, this beat right here, 1, it covers 2 beats. So the half note is worth 2 beats. Okay. The whole note is worth 4 beats. The quarter note is going to be worth 1 beat. The eighth note is going to be worth half a beat. Okay, so don't get confused with beats and half notes. So it's worth half a beat. Again, this is in 4/4. We'll get to where this is going to apply and other things other than 4/4 in a minute. And then this is worth, the 16th note is worth a quarter of a beat. Okay. So if you think of it this way, think of it right now, forget about 8th notes and 16th notes. let's just look at the half and the quarters. So this right here, again, this is worth how many beats? This is worth 2 beats. Okay, so we got 2 beats here, and it's going to cover this. So like our beat is like a pulse. Okay, imagine like that it's like a heartbeat that's happening. So here's like our heartbeat that's happening. I'll draw it up here. Our heartbeat is happening on each of these guys like this. So we have like a heartbeat. These are hearts, by the way. The first one wasn't drawn very good. And then not one here. That's gonna be the first. That's gonna be the first one of the next measure right here. Okay. So this is kind of like, this is gonna be kind of like one here of the next measure. Okay. If I had like a gray, I would gray that out, but I don't have a gray marker. And so again, this guy right here is covering 2 beats. So it's 1, 2. By definition, because this covered 2 beats, it doesn't matter what note or what, like, it doesn't matter if it's any note that comes after this is going to land on 3 because it took up that space. Okay. So in other words, like here's our pizza. This is worth right now. We've got a half a pizza. It doesn't matter what, our next thing is going to be like the third part of it. It's like the third quarter of the pizza. Even if it's like a little 16th note, it's still starting at the third quarter of the beat. All right. So if we did, instead of these being half notes, if we made this a quarter note, okay, how many beats are these worth? These are worth 1. Okay. So 4 quarter notes in here is going to look kind of like this. So you have, again, it's pulsing right here on this pulse right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just pulsing through there. Then we've got, if we wanted to go to 8th notes and we said, hey, we're going to make these 8th notes. I know I'm messing up the colors here, but these are worth a half of a beat. Okay. These are all worth half of a beat. The half of this is called the and. Okay. So we can't just call like we can't go 1, 2, but it's not the pulse. It's in between the pulse. So we're going to just call this and. 1 and 2 and 3 and this is kind of like the invisible half of that beat. Okay. So here we have, again, these are not half notes. This is a half beat. We're looking at beats here. So if you think of it in terms of kind of how the beats work, the quarter note is like the standard, and then you're dividing the quarter note up from there. And even the half note is like kind of like 2 quarter notes put together, and a whole note is like 4 quarter notes. So here, if these were all 8th notes, so these are all, again, these are all 8th notes here. So these are 8th notes. We've got 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, okay? Hopefully that is making sense. Now, again, we can make any sort of combination to this whole thing, okay? And I'm going to show you here in a second how things start to get kind of jacked up a little bit. Well, let's say here, so if I wanted to do have a quarter note. So this is going to be, this is going to be 1 beat, okay? And then let's say here, I want to put in a half note. Okay, it's worth 2 beats. Again, you see it here where you've got 1, 2. So like the 1 only takes up this space. By definition, the next one's going to land on a 2 because this took up all of the 1. Okay, 1, 2. Now how many spaces is this taking up? This is taking up 2 spaces. So it's going to land, the next beat, no matter what I draw here, is going to land on 4. It's going to be like 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so you'd hold this note out for 2 beats. And then over here, let's say I drew an 8th note here. And then 2 16th notes. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm drawing beats. So this is going to be a half beat. And then these are going to be quarter beats like that. So we have 1, 2, 4. Does that make sense? Okay. Now we can, let's see, that pulse thing is super, super important. We can also subdivide this even further. Okay. And let's see, I'm running out of colors here. I'm going to use purple on this again. So on the eighth notes here, you see we don't have anything to distinguish what the how to count this quarter or this 16th note here, and that is like this. You do the in between the one and the and, or the beat and the and, is an E. One E and in between the and the next beat is an Okay, so we have, it's going to look something like this. One E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E, and just like that. Okay, so again, this is where it gets kind of tricky for some people, because so far this is no big deal. Reading these like this, it just kind of makes sense. It's pretty intuitive. What tricks people up is when you start to have beats not land on the two, or on a beat, on the pulse, or not land on the off beat. So, and these are called, this is a subdivided beat. Okay, these are like, it's called syncopation, or a syncopated beat. That's where the hit or the note is landing on something that's not on there. So sometimes people would call this anyway, it's a syncopation. That's what you're looking at. So, like, for example, here, let's just say I wanted to draw a here I could do an eighth note, okay, which is worth half a beat, and then maybe my next note is going to be a quarter note. Okay, now I can't draw, it's not going to end up here, it's going to end up over here. So we're crossing over this beat, okay, because it's worth one beat. And then if I did another eighth note like this, it's going to be half a beat, and then another quarter note like that. This, so far we've got 1 and 3, 4. Well, no matter what, I've taken up the space. My next note is going to be on there. So we have here, what if I drew out, and all of these are quarter beats. These are 16th notes like that. Okay, so we have 1 and 2. So like, let me get a pulse here. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and where am I at here? Sorry, I'm trying to. My microphone's literally in the way for me to read this. So we have 1 and 3. So our and is going to be, our beat is going to be here, and it's going to be here. That makes sense. So now, obviously, nobody's writing out rhythms in like rectangles here. That wouldn't make any sense at all to just have a bunch of rectangles. So what they did is they came up with notes in order to show what all of these mean. Okay, so like, for example, I'll just kind of go here through the key that we created up here. All right, so our whole note is just going to be a whole. Okay, makes kind of pretty much sense. And again, it's worth 4 beats. So our whole note right there, 4 beats. So if you see a measure that's written down, it's got a whole or a circle like that, that means that note is played, it's taking up the whole thing. Now, remind you that there's like these invisible beats taking place here like that. So one of the things that kind of throws people off a little bit sometimes is these are still, the pulse is still right here. So, and they're right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So really, like, it doesn't matter where in the measure it's written. You know, if the whole note was written like this, it's the same thing. You'd play it starting on the 1. Okay. If it was written over here, you would still play it on the 1. Usually people put the notes right in the middle. Okay. Especially if it's a whole note, kind of even out the space, but just know that this note starts on 1. Okay. Moving on. So we have the half note. Okay. 2 beats. And these are kind of like, it's kind of like an alteration of this. We've got a circle with a stem. Okay. And it can be written like this too. It doesn't matter. sometimes people will write it different ways. I tend to write my stems up, but they're the same thing. So it would take 2 of these again to equal 1 of these. Okay. Now the quarter notes are the same. You know, they're just taking it a step, one more step further, and they're filling in the dot. Okay. So it would look like this. And I'm switching this now just so you can see it, but you're not going to probably switch this. If you're just writing a rhythm, you're going to pick one of these and write the rhythm that way. You're not going to be going back and forth. You're going to pick, stems are going to go up, stems are going to go down. Now, if you're writing on a staff, you know, that was like this, you know, when you get up to here, stems go down. When you're down here, stems go up. But we're not really even talking about that in music right now, in this course, in this series of lessons. Okay, the eighth notes, we're going to look at it this way. So we've got eighth notes are going to be, again, we're going to put a stem on them, but these look just like eighth note or quarter notes. So we're going to put a little flag like that. Okay, so again, you've got like that. Okay, and you could also write these, you guessed it, going down this way too. These don't look the best here. Number one, it's drawing with a Sharpie, but also it's a little bit hard to, everybody kind of has their own style, and on a piece of paper, it's going to look a little bit better. Anyway, then we have our 16th notes, and again, we're just adding a little bit more to it. We're adding 2 flags. If you've seen these, that's what that looks like right there. And I'm only going to write out 8 of these, but, oh, 2 flags. I'll write it down there. So these are 16th notes, okay? Hopefully that's making sense in the grand scheme of things here. So again, now, instead of writing out squares to distinguish where everything is at, again, I'm going to kind of make like an invisible, this is the pulse here. So here, I could write out, let's say I wanted to do a quarter note, like that, and it would be a straight line, and then a half note. Okay, now again, it's not, the next note's not going to be here. How many does this take up? It takes up 2. So we have 1, then it's going to be 2. Okay, so then maybe our next note is going to be a, let's make it a 8th note. And then we still have, right now, it's going to be on the and here. We still have a little bit of space. So I could write another 8th note, or I could write 2 16th notes like that. Okay. So that's how that would work out in that way. Let me give you another example of that, just simple notation without any syncopation or anything like that really happening. All right. So where was that? So I'm going to take off these guys here. Man, this is getting pretty dirty. All right. So again, we have our pulses here. I need to learn how to draw a heart. Okay. Whatever, that's a heart. These are hearts. I'll fill them in. That might make it look a little bit better. I don't know. Those are hearts. That's the pulse happening there. So again, this last line here doesn't matter. This is going to be our next measure or repeat or whatever the case is. Okay, now let's say we wanted to do again something similar to that. The way that I wrote it out, though, does not look very good. Okay, because let me write it out one more time. Actually, so we had our quarter note, our half note, which is going to put us on 4. Okay, mind you, this is like starting right here. This is starting on this pulse right here. Okay, it's not starting kind of where it's seen. And the more difficult rhythms get, it's important to realize that, to know that, to be counting on the pulses and being very aware of where the pulse is actually at, because sometimes people write out rhythms really bad. You know, so like right here, if I was writing, I'll show you real quick. Let me get through this and I'll show you kind of how bad people write out bad rhythms. Okay, then we've got here, we're down with the quarter note, and we have the quarter note here. I mean, sorry, eighth note here, and then 2 16th notes like this. Now, these right here, these guys, right, this section, this is going to be hard to read. Okay, you got all these flags happening. I mean, this isn't super hard to read, but if you have a lot of eighth notes and 16th notes happening, we got to find a way to clean this up. So they have basically a way to tie stems together. So I could write this last beat here. I could write it two other different ways. So kind of a total of 3, might even be more. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tie these two together just like that. That's what this means. This means these two are identical. This means the same exact thing right there. Then another way you can do this is you can actually tie all 3 of these together. So you could have like an eighth note, okay? And then it ties into 2 16th notes like that. All 3 of these are written out the same way, which is one of the problems. It's not a problem. It's just one of the hurdles to get over when you're looking at music theory or the way notation is happening, is that there is multiple different ways to do the exact same thing usually. And it just depends on how there's best practices, there's best ways that people do it, but it just kind of depends on what you're going to do. It just depends on if it's something that how you write it or how the person that you're reading wrote the stuff. All right. So that's what flags are. So here, basically, I have, if I'm writing 2 eighth notes together, I can just do this. And if I'm writing 4 eighth notes together, like this, I can do that. Okay, that should be on the side. And the same thing with 16th notes. 2 16th notes together, I'll write the bottoms here. They would be tied like this. And you see there's 2 stems there. 4 16th notes together would be tied like this. Okay. Now here's the thing. I'm going to have to kind of clear out some of the space here. Here's the thing with the way that a lot of times people write rhythms too. And this is how I do. I very rarely will write out a circle unless it's a half note or whole note. So I will do it. A lot of times I will write out like my eighth notes, my quarter notes like this. So like my eighth note, I would kind of do like that. 16th notes, if I'm doing 1, if I'm tying them, it's going to be kind of like that. And these are just a little bit easier to just write a rhythm like that, where you're just writing out a slash instead of a circle. So if you see a slash, it equals a circle. Okay, they're the same thing. All right, so we've got our rhythms, or we've got our stuff. We know what everything is. I'm going to write them up here just to be clear, just so we have it. So we have whole note. It's going to be kind of like another key. We have whole note. And that is going to be so we're 4 beats. And it's going to look like this. Then we've got our half note. It's worth 2 beats. And it's going to be written like this. I'll just write, well, I'll put them all stems up. And it's going to be written like this. Our quarter note is going to be worth 1 beat. And it's going to look like this, or, like I said, the slash. Our eighth note I did not spell that right. Sorry. Why is my brain doing that? What am I doing? How the heck do you spell eighth? Sorry, that's super embarrassing. That's what happens when you do these late night ones here. I'm sorry. This is crazy. There we go. I'm sorry. E-I-G-H. Yeah, it just looked weird to me. Eighth note is worth a half a beat. And the 16th note is worth a quarter beat. Okay. Here I got an eighth note right here, either this or two of them together. And then 16th notes going to look like this, or two of them or four of them together, two stems. All right. So let's look at a couple things in practical terms of how we're going to write these out. Again, let's look at the ties for a second. How we tie is kind of up to whoever's writing it out. But again, if you're writing out, I'm going to do slashes now. If you're writing out 4 or 8, what am I saying? Let's say 4 eighth notes like this. You could write it just like that. That's going to be hard to read. So, most people are probably going to write it out either depending on the pulse of the feel of the music like this, or you could tie all 4 of them together like that. Usually I find that people write it like this. And then with 16ths, it's the same principle. You can write them out as this. Usually people will tie all 4 of them together if they are right next to each other like that. Now, a couple things that you can do here too is, let's see, if you had, let's say, a rhythm like 1 eighth note and 2 16th notes, I would probably write it out. You could write it out like we kind of showed here in a second ago as this. Just depends. You might want to have that separately. You definitely would tie those together, but a better way to do it is to do it like this. This is the kind of like the example we just had where we tie those things together. If we had 2 16th notes here and an eighth note, you can do the tie the same way, where you could do 2 like this with the 1, or the better way would be to do it like this. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So these are 16th notes, and that is an eighth note. Just depends on how you want to notate it, and that's kind of the easiest ways you can do. So you know, again, you can tie across multiple things. And by the way, if you want to just go into further, that's a 32nd note. If you really, 4 is going to be a 64th note, and the same thing goes with ties. Right in this lesson, we're just dealing with going down to the 16th note. But if you had, like, let's say 4, these are 4 16th notes. That's 4 32nd notes. That's 4 64th notes. You're only going to really get into that if you're talking to drums and percussion, for the most part, at least in my experience. Okay. But so right now, again, real important to understand that in a 4/4 measure, there are how many beats in the measure? There are 4 beats. Okay. So you cannot, this is a super important rule, you cannot exceed the number of beats that are in the measure. Okay. Just like our pizza, this is our whole pizza. If you got this extra slice over here, you can't cram it into the pizza. It doesn't fit. This is already whole. Okay. Also, in the same way, you cannot have a measure that is not whole. It has to have the right number of beats. So you cannot have like a measure that's like this, where it's missing a 16th note or whatever the case is. So it's super important to fill that whole thing up. Okay. You got to fill the whole measure up. It always has to be filled up. Okay. Now, sometimes though, you don't want to have that. You want to have something filled more, so you're like, well, maybe I have a note right now. It's played right here on the 4th beat, but I want it to hold out longer than just 1 beat. How do I do that? Okay. So let's say we had a quarter note. Okay. So again, I'm going to write out these 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Wow, fart. 2, 3, 4. That's our pulse. Okay. That doesn't look perfect. Sorry. So here's our quarter note here. And then we have a half note. So this is 1, 2, 3, The next one's going to land on 4. Okay. So let's say I want another half note here though. Well, if I write this out, I can't get it. 2 plus 2 plus 1 equals 5. And you cannot have 5 in a 4/4 measure. Okay. So how do you do that? It's simple. You just tie it together. Okay. So let's say, so here, I'm going to make this a quarter note. I'm going to draw another quarter note right here. And I'm going to just put a tie like that. And then this right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. The next one's going to be here. Okay. So this is 1 beat. This is holding out for 2 beats. This is holding out for 2 beats, which means the next beat is going to be right here on beat 2. Okay. So then here, then I would fill this out. So that same thing could be like something like this. Okay. That works. That is a legit way to write something out, because here we have 1 plus 2 and then plus 1 plus 1. Even though you're not playing this note, it's already been hit here, but you're holding it through there. Then you have 2 and 1. So again, 1 plus 2 plus 1 equals 4. Okay, so we have our 4 beats there, and we have our 4 beats here. So there you go. That's a bad thing, but there you go. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's do another example of that, of why you might need to tie something together. But tying over the bar line is super important. You can tie anything. Okay, you could tie if I wanted to just, for whatever reason I didn't want to write a half note, I could just tie 2 quarter notes together. I could, if you wanted to, this would be like the worst notation style ever, but if I had 4 16th notes, I could tie all of those together like that if I wanted to. And this would be the same as playing a 1 quarter note. Okay. There's different ways to do different things, and sometimes they would make sense and sometimes they wouldn't. You can even tie notes of different values together. So you could do something like this, where you said, I want a note that plays for 3 beats, and you could tie a quarter note to a half note. And in fact, that you could do it the same way. You could do this. These are actually the same thing, even though they're written backwards. They're the same thing. This would be the same thing to this. I would never do this, but if you wanted to tie like that, that would be the same. Those are all the same things. You can also tie, the smaller notes together. If you have like a quarter note and you're wanting to play it to be 1.5 beats, so you could do something like this. Okay, and you could tie those together. And this is equal 1.5 beats, because you have a quarter note, which is worth 1, and your 8th note, which is worth a half. So this is 1.5 beats. So there you go there. So that the tie is super important, because you see that a lot in things written out. Now, here's a great example of why you would want to write a tie. So again, we're in 4/4, and let me try to write out. Okay, so we have our 1 beat, 2, 3, 4. Okay, if I wrote this rhythm here, so I have a 8th note. Okay, again, I'm going to write out here's our ands here. So there's our invisible and of each pulse, each beat. Excuse me. If I were to write out a quarter note right here, and then a quarter note right here, and a quarter note right here, and then, is that right? Yeah. Then I could write out an 8th note right here. So take a look at this. There's a half a note, half a beat, and then we've got 1, 2. So 1, 2, 3 plus 2 halves equals 4. Technically, this is workable. However, people, when you're playing, found another marker, different color. People, when you're playing, want to see their syncopations written out a little bit better than that. So this actually, to me, again, I'm not genius here, but to me, this is a better way to notate this. Okay, it would be something like this. and I would tie these together like that. Okay. And the reason is because we have the one and. So that thing is happening. If right here, if you're just looking at those notes in the middle, it's hard to see that they land on ands. Okay. Here, this is easy to see that this like invisible, like offbeat here, lands on all these like that. So here you have one and it just flows a little bit better. It's easier to read. So that's another way to use that. Now, if you have a lot of notes that are going to be playing, particularly quarter notes, like 1.5 beats. So instead of having like your quarter note, and then you're tying it to the 16th note like this. I'm sorry, 8th note like this. This equals 1.5. Okay. Fair enough. However, this isn't always the best way to write this. This can it can be the best way to write it, but it's not always the best way to write it. A lot of times that there's this thing called a dot, and it's a dotted note, and this may be confusing to somebody. These are the same exact thing. Quarter note with a dot next to it. Okay, so this equals that. These are the same exact thing. The dot is like this. You do the same thing with a actually, I'm going to give you another example and then I'll explain it. So you could have the half note and a quarter note and tie it together. And so this would equal how many beats? 2 plus 1 equals 3 beats. Okay. But you could also write it out as a half note with a dot. These are the same thing. These both equal 3 beats. So what does this dot do? Okay, because in the first example, it added a half a beat. In the second example, it added a whole beat to the note. Well, the dot essentially adds, how am I going to write this out? Adds half the duration of note attached to. Okay. That's not, this is attached. Anyway, it's half of this. So anyway, let me explain it. So the dot, like right here in our example here, we have this dotted half note. So the half note right here, this is going to get the 2 beats. And what's half of 2? 1. So this guy gets 1 beat. So that's what the dotted half note means. So if you had like, if you could even have a dotted, if you had like a measure that you could fit more than 4 beats in. So if it was in like the 6/4 or something like that, which we'll talk about in a second. This is actually a longer lesson than I thought it'd be. I thought it'd be done by now, but this is good stuff. I think hopefully it's helping people out. This is worth 4. Okay. This is worth 4. And then this dot, half of 4 is 2. So this is 6 beats. Okay. It's the same as this. Those are the same thing. Okay. So the dot is nice. So here's a couple, let me kind of give you the most common examples of this. Usually you're going to see dotted half notes. Okay. And so basically it is a half note plus half of the value of that equals 3. Okay. Then we have our quarter note. Okay. With a dot on it, which means is equal to a quarter note plus an 1/8 note equals 1.5. Okay. Now we might have down here, you kind of keep going, dotted 1/8 note is going to be equal to an 1/8 note plus what's half of an 1/8 note? 16th note. So this is worth 3/4 beat. Okay. And it just keeps on going from there. Again, these are probably the most common ones you're going to see like that. So now I'm going to kind of leave it here, but I'm going to talk about one more thing, and that is rests. And all the same rules apply to rests. It's just a different symbol. Okay. So up here we have our whole notes. These are like our whole notes written out. But then the rest version of that is going to be written out like this. Okay. So if you see that now on music notes where, it's written out on the staff, whatever, it's going to be written like this. It's just going to be like kind of attached to the middle like that. But if we're doing it, writing it out in a measure like this, here's our measures, it would just be written like that. Okay. Now, the way to remember this, and this is what I learned in 5th grade, was that a whole man, when he's like greeting a lady, will like take his hat all the way off and like flip it over. So it's like an upside down hat. Okay. And then a half of a man will not do that. He'll just kind of tip his hat a little bit, and it's going to look like this. Okay. Super cheesy, super cheesy way to remember it. But I'm telling you, I have always used that, and it makes sense to me. So for what it's worth. So this is a half. Okay. So these are the same thing. And then an 8th note. I'll do my best to kind of write this out the way that it's actually written out, but a rest. These are all rests. An 8th. So I'm going to just say these are rests, but they hold out the rest the same amount of time. The 8th is written, I write it out like this. That's how when I'm notating it, I just kind of write it like a scribbly S like that. Technically, and this isn't even going to look right, but technically, it's actually kind of like a backwards S and then like that. That's kind of what a rest looks like. And again, usually it's like calligraphy style type thing when it's written out in music. And so it looks better. Anyway, I go like this. That's a rest to me. So that's how I'm going to write it out here. So here's our rest like that. You can kind of, it can kind of look, all these, they're going to be similar to each other. So these are the rests. Now the 8th rests, these are a little bit, so these are 8th notes, 8th rests here. I'm sorry, what am I doing? Oh, sorry, quarter. These are quarter notes. Sorry, wrong color. Quarter rests. Fart. There's mine. It could also be like this, kind of. Something like that on those lines. 8th rests, these are a little bit easier. You got a dot, swings over, down like that. Okay, pretty simple. 16th rests, it's the same thing. You're adding more to it. You've got one swing over. You've got another swing over. There's your 8th or your 16th rest like that. Okay, so these rests are the same thing. So what happens here, again, in context of all this, what if you have a measure where you say, you know what, I actually just want to play, I want to play a whole note, and then that's it. I don't want to, that's the end of the song. That's the end of the thing I want to say. Well, then you can just go in here and you can write in a half rest, and it still keeps up. This is worth 4. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Okay. If you had quarter notes here and you say, you know what, I want to do, I don't want to just write out quarter note. I don't want to go bomb, bomb. I want it to stop. Bomb, bomb, like that. Well, then you could write I'm sorry, I said 8th note. I said quarter, but I meant half notes. You could write in these rests like this. So you could have bomb, rest, bomb, rest. Hopefully that makes sense. Heck, you could do, however, it just fills it out. Okay. So the rest, you just got to be aware of. All the same rules apply to it. If you have a half, what am I saying? Yeah, there we go. A dotted half rest. It's going to look like that. It looks kind of silly sometimes. You can tie things together. You could take two 8th rests and tie them together. Okay. You could take an 8th, quarter rest and tie it to a half rest if you want to. You could do that. All of the same rules apply to the dotted, or to the rest as well. In fact, even the dots, you could do a dotted half rest, and it's gonna be worth 3. Okay, you have keep on drawing a quarter note. You have your quarter rest, dotted quarter rest is equal to 1.5. Okay, you have your eighth rest, dotted eighth rest, equal to 3/4 of a beat. 3/4 of a rest, 3/4 of a beat. That all comes together like that. So that basically, guys, is in a nutshell the rhythm that you need to know. Obviously, it gets more advanced to that. This is kind of like like I said, the crash course. How long have I been going? I don't even know how long this video. 50 minutes. 50 minutes. I thought that would be, honestly, I thought that would be a 20-minute lesson. But I'm glad that we got it, and hopefully it'll be able to help people out in the future too, as they're trying to figure out and learn music theory and learn all that kind of stuff up. Okay, not too many of you guys watching right now. There's only 7 of you, which is awesome. Thank you guys for you 7 being here, and we will be back next week. I want to take a couple of questions and comments here. So Lillian said, so the total of the rests and the beats for the notes are added together to equal 4 per measure. Yes, 4 beats per measure. So no matter what, there's going to be 4 beats in this measure. So in other words, if I had 4 quarter notes, I couldn't add a rest here. That adds to it just the same way as adding another beat would add to it. Okay. So yes, it's always going to equal 4. Now here's the thing. This is what time signatures mean. And this is kind of another lesson in itself. But it's good to know this, as you're looking at this 4/4 or whatever time signature means. This just tells you how many the top note does, and the bottom tells you what. Okay. So, if I said, hey, bring 4 to the party, you're like, 4 what? Oh yeah, sorry, 4 apples. Bring 4 apples to the party. Okay, that would make sense. Or if I said, hey, hand me 8 things. Hand me 8. What are you talking about? Oh yeah, hand me 8 slices of pizza. Whatever. I don't know. It just that's kind of how, actually, pizza is kind of how you could think of it. So the 4 that tells you how many, and then the bottom number tells you what it is. So if you had like 5/4, then that would mean there would be 5 beats or 5 pulses in this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you would have to have 5 beats written out here. Okay. If I had 6/4, you have to have 6. You go on, so on and so forth. These would be quarter notes. Now, what if you said, okay, what if I had 2/2? Okay. Well, that means that there needs to be 2 half notes. Okay, because the bottom note tells you what you're bringing. 2 half beats, or 2 half. Yeah, 2 half notes, or so that basically how it would be written out. Now you don't ever see hardly 2/2 because 2/2 looks exactly like 4/4. Okay, is that this? If you have 4 quarter notes and 2 half notes, that means the same thing. Then the kind of the common ones here is you're going to see 6/8 a lot. That means you need to bring 6 eighth notes. So it would be something like this. This is kind of the way that you'd write it. Now, just so happens that eighth notes or 6/8, this pulse doesn't work right this, because the pulse in 6/8 is the 1 and the 4 is where it's at. They're in groups. So actually you would write it out like this. This is kind of how you would pulse 6/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it would be 6 eighth notes in here. Okay. I mean, you can just keep on going up. Let's give a couple examples. I mean, heck, if you wanted to have 4/1, I mean, you'd bring 4 whole notes in the measure. It's gonna be a long measure. I've never seen that written out, but you could do it. And then lastly, you could have, I don't know, what's another one? So you could have like I don't know if you had like 9/8, which is kind of a fun rhythm. Um, it'd be the same thing. Nine eighth notes would be what it would take to wrap this thing up, or to fill, not eighth notes, but yeah, eighth notes to wrap this up. So this tells you that it's going to be eighth notes that are filling this up. Okay, if I had 9 quarter notes, if I had 9/4, then I would have to have 9 quarter notes to fill this thing up, like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So hopefully that kind of makes sense there on what that means. But yes, whatever the rhythm that's written out, or whatever the time signature is, a combination of rests and notes written out has to equal whatever the time signature is. All right, let's see. Way back earlier in the lesson, Adam Ludall asked, "Hey Kennis, how long have you been playing guitar, and when did you first start?" I math 33 years. I started when I was 9. Somebody in my church gave me a guitar, and I started playing. It wasn't until I was 12 that I really picked it up and started to dive deep into it. And even that wasn't diving deep. It wasn't until I went to college that I dove deep and got drenched, which is a funny story I've got for you at some point for that. Let's see. Non-existent human said, "Appreciate you helping us out." Absolutely. Lillian Reed said, "An aha moment." Awesome. I'd love to know what the aha moment was, but I'm glad that this is kind of starting to come together in your thoughts and your brain. So very, very cool. All right, guys. Well, without further ado, make sure you comment. Do me a favor, just comment on one of my videos, music theory videos. If you have any questions you want me to address, you can comment right now and I'll see it later. But that way, as we move forward with this, I'm going to start picking out 2 or 3 questions each week and talking about that specifically. And I will be starting to work on my music theory course, the full course, which will be very similar to this. And I'll be releasing that hopefully before the next school year, so that if you're going to music school or you're going to, be doing that, it'll be good for you, a good resource for you. Anyway, guys, Kennis Russell out. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. And I will see you